Hello and welcome to the December 2018 update from Pennyhill Junction. So as you can see, I've already made a start on boxing up some of my stock ahead of the big changes to the layout which are imminent. So as you can see, Old Dean Common depot is now empty of all stock, and this section here is going to be the first in which the track is lifted. And as I mentioned in my previous video, this track primarily, which is the Pico Code 100 wooden sleeper track, will be used for the fiddle yard in this area here at the back behind twin train shed. Okay, so camera in position, let's get started. Okay, so that's 6 roads of the 8 here at what was formerly known as Old Dean Common Depot, now removed. Just these 2 lines to remove from the depot, and obviously the entrance into the depot and the point work. And then I can start to remove the outer lines, including this section here, which has had the ballast. But you can already see, already rescued quite a large collection of track, which will go straight into the fiddle yard. So my stock is nearly all packed up. All that remains is my GWR Class 800, which I'm just giving one final run around the track before I remove the rest. So as I scroll around, you'll see the old Dean Common Depot has gone. The DRS TMD has also been removed, and now it's time to work on lifting up the platforms at Pennyhill Junction Station, and then the removal of the remaining track. And we just watched the Class 800 come through Pennyhill Junction Station one last time. Okay, so all platforms and track from Pennyhill Junction Station have now been lifted up. I was originally planning on doing another time-lapse piece of the deconstruction of the station area, but as you can probably see from the baseboard surface, it's made quite a bit of a mess. A lesson learned. Probably not a good idea to PVA your platforms down to the surface. Yeah, it kept them very secure, but of course in the event that you want to lift it up and change things, it's an absolute nightmare to remove. So I'm not sure I'll take that approach next time. Not that I've got plans to change my layout again after this, but you know, with this hobby you just never know. But what I have done is I've taken some still photos, some images I've captured of the progress of removing the platforms and track from this area, which I'll show you now. So one of the concerns I had before taking up the track was the ballasted sections. I wasn't sure, obviously, what state that would leave the track in, and how much track I'd lose as a result of that. But as you would have seen from the images a moment ago, when I panned right around the sort of 3/4 of the layout, you'll see I managed to remove a couple of sections of track in the corner with relative ease. So I'm just going to make a start on this section now. Obviously cutting out the dropper wires initially. And then removing the track pins. And then you'll see one more. you'll then see that the track, when I get all the pins out, should then lift from the ballast with relative ease and straight out. So no damage to the track, as you can see. Just simply using a screwdriver, you can remove most of the ballast. Or it might be easier just to take the track outside and knock it maybe against a piece of wood. But that, let's say, can be cleaned up and get reused in the fiddle yard. Okay, so there we have it. Pennyhill Junction version 1 is no more. So all the track has now been lifted. And of course the next job is the big tidy up. But before I get onto that, I just wanted to have a quick count and see how much track I'd rescued. So in terms of this area here, which I said is going to be the fiddle yard, and I'm going to use as much of the sort of Code 100 flexi track with the wooden sleepers that I had from the previous layout. So I've just got a length here of 3 1-yard lengths of flexi track, and that will pretty much be the length of the fiddle yard, leaving enough space either side, of course, for the point work. So counting up some of the track, which is there or thereabouts, still a 1-yard length. Here I've counted up, there's 28, plus obviously the 3 that I've got laid out here. So it's 10 roads that I'm looking to do. So basically 30 lengths of 1-yard flexi track, which I have here in front of me now, without even the need for any of the ballasted track. So potentially that might just get binned. And I've also got to see there's plenty of various size cut-offs of track there. If I need to just extend a little bit or fill in any gaps, there's plenty over there, and I've got some more bits over there in the corner. So plenty of track to play with, more than enough. That will fully complete the fiddle yard when I get to a point of laying that track. Okay, so all the mess has now been removed. So that's all the old cork and ballast, etc. So we have a reasonably clean baseboard surface once again. All ready now to prepare for the new layout. But what I want to do first, before I put a coat of primer on the top surface of the baseboard prior to laying the cork for the fiddle yard, the next thing I want to do is fill the holes which I created on the previous layout for things like the point motors, and also some of the smaller holes. There's obviously the wire that comes out the point for the polarity switch, and also we've got holes here which were for the dropper wires on the previous layout. So what I'm going to be using is just some simple wood filler. I'm just going to go through that process now as an example, particularly on this area here, to seal up this 1-point motor which was drilled out on this section here. So before I start to apply the filler, there's just a couple of final steps I need to do. You'll see that I've marked out each of the holes or an area close by with masking tape. That's just so, obviously, particularly these dropper holes, they're quite small, quite difficult to find. So I've just marked them out in these various areas, just so it makes it much easier for me to find when I'm applying the wood filler. Also, what I'm doing is underneath the baseboard, I'm sealing the bottom with some tape. So if I take you under the baseboard, you'll see there's some tape underneath, which I'm using to prevent any filler coming through. You see I've just got one more piece to do there, which is the hole that was drilled for the point motor. And then also the final step in terms of preparation is just to use some sandpaper just to go over each of the holes, just to make sure we've got a relatively smooth surface prior to the filler application. So I'll cut some tape to seal that hole underneath, carry on with sanding down the surface, top surface of the holes, and then begin to apply the filler. So the filler I'm using here comes in two parts. So you have the hardening solution. That's obviously for applying the filler. Then there's the filler itself. This is a natural colour for pine, light oak, so obviously goes with the baseboard colour. Not that it really matters, because obviously it's going to be covered in the primer at some point. So what it recommends is that you take perhaps a golf ball size amount, just using a little bit of MDF, which I used on the platform. Take a little bit more. And this hardening solution is simply applying about a pea size. Here we go. Then you just mix it up. And once it's fully mixed and the colour is consistent, then you just apply it to the areas required. So the first area I'm going to apply it to here is of course the largest hole. To seal the point motor hole. So you may ask the question, what's the point in doing this, particularly with some of the dropper wire holes. And of course this area as well is primarily going to be fiddle yard, and so I'm going to be laying cork right across the fiddle yard section. However, if at some point I'm applying some glue, or this foreground area here, I'm going to have the heritage line. If I'm going to apply any scenery, etc., and if I'm applying glues or water, etc., or paints, I don't want that seeping through the holes and falling onto my floorboards. So it just makes sense why I have the baseboard stripped, to fill all the holes. like so. And it takes about 20 minutes then to harden and before sanding down. So it does suggest that you leave a little bit of a mound on the top and then sand down after. So I'll carry on now with all the smaller holes, and then you can join me when it's all hardened and time to sand down. So you join me now about half an hour later, and the filler has now hardened. As you can see, I've also sanded this down. So a perfectly smooth surface. This was the point motor to hole, so that's now covered. I've also begun to sand down some of the dropper wires. You can still just see the outline, but I say there's no longer a hole. Sanded smooth to the surface. And also, if you take another look again underneath the baseboard, you can see that the point motor hole is also filled from underneath, so the filler did drop down to the surface of the tape and completely close the hole. So what I'll do now is obviously carry on sanding this section here, and then do the rest of the layout, get all the holes filled, get it sanded, and then can make a start on priming the surface. So that's all the holes filled and sanded down right around the baseboard. So now it's just time to clear up all the mess and then clear the baseboard fully of any items that I've got just stored currently, and then I can begin to put the primer down. So we'll come on to that in just a moment. After that, we're pretty much all set to go. Okay, so you join me again for the final stages of preparation for the new layout. So as you can see, the baseboards are now nice and clear of mess. I've used a very lightly dampened cloth just to go over and remove any remaining pieces of dust or leftover mess from the sanding. So now it's all ready to prime. I'm using this. It's a primer and undercoat for multi-surface. As you can see, it's for both wood and metals. It says there it improves paint adhesion. So you'll know, obviously, you can tell from here that on the previous layout I put down all the track before putting any undercoat or protection on the baseboard. Once the track was down, I did sort of fill in all the gaps with burnt umber acrylic, but this time around I'm going to go over the whole layout with a multi-surface primer. I say just to obviously protect the wood, but as it says there, improves paint adhesion. So when I am doing scenics and ballasting in the future, hopefully having that primer on the bottom will help all that scenic material to bond better to the baseboard. So I'm going to crack on with this, and then join me, I'll say, for the final stages of this update and the last piece of preparation for the new layout. Okay, so there we have it. After 2 coats of primer, the baseboard is done and ready to start building the new layout. You may have noticed I've also primed the wooden beam, timber beam at the back there. That's obviously going to be off scene. That's going to be the fiddle yard, but I just thought it would blend nicely with the foreground, and also with obviously the insulating foil, rather than standing out as an old wooden piece of timber. But I've also, as you can see, I've painted the beams that cut through the baseboard. I've painted them a sky blue colour, and the reason I've done that is in those areas I'm planning to build some scenery, maybe scratch build some buildings, etc. and just try and make it integrate more into the beam, so when I do have some close-up shots of the scenery in the future, the beams hopefully will not be so noticeable. Okay, so that's it for the December update and my final video of 2018. So I'll start the new year with a new project and a whole new layout. So for now, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, as I look forward to starting a new project early on in the new year, and you should hopefully start to see the first of those updates, as I said, very early in the new year, when work begins on this area here, which will be the fiddle yard. So until then, thanks again for watching, and bye for now.